So here are the 5 things that are essential to your health. Now, this is true. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your goal. It doesn't matter if you have food allergies or intolerances. It doesn't matter your fitness level. It doesn't matter if you have a faith or if you don't. These things are true no matter what. And these are 5 solid rocks that impact your health, your longevity, and your weight management. None of them are more important than the other for general health, but you're going to see that depending on where you are in your life and what your goals are, some are things that are going to get more focus than others in a certain stage in your life. So let's go. Hello and welcome to the Core Podcast. We're your hosts, Aline Keller
and Shannon Polson.
I'm a precision nutrition certified coach.
And I'm a NASM certified personal trainer for over 13 years. We support women 30 years old and over to pursue health through realistic nutrition and fitness strategies. Our main passion is to help you find that smile when you look in the mirror, find freedom when you eat, and joy when moving your body.
Make sure to subscribe for your weekly dose of doable health tips, practical advice, and so much more. It's the health education you wish you'd had.
So today, Aline is chatting about the foundation of health, or solid rocks. And I love that she's using the word foundation because I think this is very important in our health journey, whether it's emotional, mental, physical. All around, we need to create that solid foundation in order to safely progress our way forward. So Aline, take it away. I'm really excited to hear about those solid rocks that you're going to chat about today.
All right. And it's interesting because it's very us to be very foundational and work on the essentials. And today I'm just kind of going to define all of this for all our wonderful listeners. So what do we really need to be healthy? And this question gets asked and answered over and over. And funny enough, the surface answer for this changes over the decades. So we've been through idolizing and banning many things when it comes to health, including sugar, carbs, meat, breakfast, dinner, white foods, eggs, different types of exercise, meditation. But if you look beyond all of these trends, so to speak, there's some foundational things that have stood the test of time. And I call these the solid rocks or the essentials. And you can dive really, really deep into each one of these, or you can just go more surface into the essence of each one. And regardless of how deep you choose to go, these are 5 things that are going to change your life. Now, most people don't need the deep dive. Most people just need to actually commit to these 5 things. In fact, a lot of times we keep trying to go deep, like trying to find these details, things like macro splits or nutrient timing or optimal training range or sleep supplements or self-help books or life hacks. All these things are less important than actually committing to mastering the essentials. And odds are you're never going to need to sweat all the small stuff. So before diving in, I just want to give you a visual. And you may have heard or seen this before, but not in this context. So imagine that in front of you, there's a container, and you know that everything is going to fit in this container. You have 5 big rocks, you have some pebbles, you have some sand, and you have some water. This container is the right size for all of this, and there shouldn't be any extra space, but there also shouldn't be overflow. And your role is to put the 5 rocks, the pebbles, the sand, and the water inside this container. Now, how much fits in the container depends on what you put in first. So if you start with the water or the sand, you're going to have an overflow. You won't be able to put all the things in the container. But if you start with the pebbles, you're going to fit more in, but you still won't be able to fit everything. However, if you start with the rocks, everything is going to fit. And the reason for this is because if you start with the big rocks, they're going to take up the most space, yes, but there's a lot of empty space around them. The pebbles are going to take up some of that empty space, and some of the space is the sand, and water is going to go in between that filling up those empty spaces. They fill up the cracks and they find a way around the bigger rocks and the pebbles. So it's not the rocks trying to make space through sand and water, it's the sand and water adjusting to the big rocks. Now, all that's super cute, but what do you do with that? So here are the 5 things that are essential to your health. Now, this is true. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your goal. It doesn't matter if you have food allergies or intolerances. It doesn't matter your fitness level. It doesn't matter if you have a faith or if you don't. These things are true no matter what. And these are 5 solid rocks that impact your health, your longevity, and your weight management. None of them are more important than the other for general health, but you're going to see that depending on where you are in your life and what your goals are, some are things that are going to get more focus than others in a certain stage in your life. So let's go. Starting with nutrition is what you eat matters. So there's no sugarcoating this. There's no getting away from this. Our bodies reflect what we do with them and what we put into them, and what we eat matters. You felt this before. Maybe you had too much alcohol and you had a headache or a dry mouth or a hangover that you had to deal with. Maybe you ate too much at a meal and you had that feeling of being stuffed. Maybe you got the meat sweats. Maybe you felt uncomfortable after so much food at once. Maybe you've gone on a super low calorie diet, and after a few days, you were completely out of energy and you were famished. Maybe you found, whether you realize this or not, that certain foods make you feel better and give you more energy, while other foods seem to put you in a slump or just make you feel kind of off. And do not get on your high horse and don't start listing a bunch of bad foods, air quotes, just yet, because this is different for different people. Now, my point is that what we eat matters. Like I've said multiple times here, the bulk of our diet should be whole, minimally processed foods. And by bulk, I mean 70 to 75%. This is for several reasons, including nutritional profile, meaning more fiber, vitamins, minerals, micronutrients. Also, these foods are generally lower in calories per volume of food, so you can eat more and feel more satiated. Besides all of this, processed foods actually take less energy to digest than whole foods. And there's a whole episode on metabolism. You can check that out. And it's not absurd, like it's not this massive difference, but it adds up over time, meaning that after digestion, your net calories are higher in the highly processed foods than in the whole foods. So that's the first solid rock, nutrition. You have to master the art of eating minimally processed and whole foods. Eat slowly, eat mindfully, learn your body cues. And yes, protein is important. How much you eat is important, but those are the pebbles. If you're eating mostly highly processed foods, thinking about protein or calories aren't going to get you very far. You need to first master the basics. Eat mostly minimally processed foods. So that's the first solid rock. The second one is exercise. And maybe you say, but I don't like to exercise, but it's boring, but it's too hard, but it's not fun, but nobody does it with me. I mean, there are so many excuses that we have, and I hear you, okay? It's not always fun. It's not always great. And we live in a culture where exercise is usually most of the time associated with fat loss, with being skinny or looking appropriately hot. And if those are triggers for you, or if you don't actually have the goal of losing weight, it feels like there's no point to exercise. So I want to tell you why exercise is a solid rock and why this is something you need to pay attention to. And this information is specifically for women. It applies somewhat to men, but the numbers that I'm going to talk about are for females. So a few reasons that have nothing to do with weight loss that are important for you to exercise. Bone density. So weight bearing, high impact resistance training exercise, these types of exercise improve bone density in women. And at the age of 35, we start to gradually lose bone density. So this in itself should be a reason for you to exercise. Another one is aging well. Think of it this way. If you think of a 20-year-old sedentary woman and a 20-year-old active woman, you're going to see a gap in their abilities. But when you look at those same women at 60 years old being active or sedentary, the gap is much, much bigger. And strength training is going to build and maintain strength. It's going to give you muscle mass and bone density. It reduces the risk of injury. It reduces joint pain. It improves mental health. So that gap, it gets lessened. You have a better quality of life as you age. So start investing in your future self. You're not just exercising because right now you want to look good and it's super fun. No, do it for your future self, but start now. The best time to start would have been probably 20 years ago, but now is the second best time for you to start exercise. And what should you do? Start walking and strength training. Just those are the lottery winners of exercise. Just if you do that, you're already doing a lot of good. Another good reason to exercise is metabolism. So resistance training can increase your muscle mass, which increases your metabolic rate. Why was that so hard to get out? Meaning that you burn more calories at rest. So it also improves your cellular performance, meaning that your body works better from the inside out. Now, this is not an extensive list of the benefits of exercise. We can have a podcast of an hour and a half just talking about the benefits of exercise, but I wanted to throw in my favorite reasons for exercise to kind of inspire you to get moving. So 2 to 3 times a week, 20 to 30 minutes is enough to get the benefits from exercise. You don't need to be a gym rat. You don't need to be an athlete. So that's the second big rock that we are talking about. Now, the third big rock is stress management. Now, this isn't completely accurate because when I say stress management, I really mean emotional health. Stress is probably the biggest issue for most people, but it's not the full story. Your emotional health, which includes your mental health, it's important for your general well-being. So your health and, it's just your mental health, emotional health, it plays a big role on your general health. And a big one is your relationship with food. So since food is such a big solid rock, our relationship to food, our relationship with our nutrition, it matters. So why do we eat? How do we feel about food? How does food make us feel? Are there foods that bring us positive emotions and thoughts? Are there foods that bring us negative emotions and thoughts? So we often turn to or away from food when our emotions are high, and understanding this and learning to manage this is foundational for our mental and relational health, not to mention the impact it has on our physical health. Now, another one, rock number 4, is sleep. So sleep is the unsung hero, the underrated tool, the seemingly random thing that makes a massive difference in our health. Now, I don't have a huge post on sleep set up yet. We haven't done like anything big on this, but I want to summarize for you a few points. Sleep is a solid rock because it interferes with our entire being. Sleep helps regulate hormones. It's when your bodies heal and repair. Sleep is when your brain solidifies learning. Sleep is when you refuel. Sleep is when your body slows down all the big processes that it does so that it can heal and repair. And when you're awake, it heal and repair from when you were awake, and it does an internal cleanup. So sleep is really, really powerful. Now, if you don't sleep, you have a harder time making good decisions. You feel hungrier for comfort food even after you've eaten. You feel sluggish. Your body doesn't seem to respond as it should. Your mental function is worsened. If you're losing weight, you're losing more lean mass than fat mass. So sleep is a really, really big rock because it's really important. Our bodies were not designed to be working all the time. We need rest. We need repair. We need downtime. Sleep is an investment. It's not a waste of time. And a few pointers for sleep. You should aim for 7 to 9 hours per night. You should try to go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day. It's important to have a calming sleep routine. It's important to avoid screens or at least excessive light about 2 hours before bedtime. Avoid eating 2 to 3 hours before going to bed. Now, this one is not universal. Most people shouldn't eat before going to bed. There are those odd people that, it really doesn't matter to them. Sleep in a dark, cool room. So these are just some things that you can do to start improving your sleep, to start improving this area that's really going to have a big impact on your mental function and on your physical health. And the last big rock is your faith or your mindset. Now, this one is deceptively simple. What you think determines what you believe. What you believe determines how you act, and how you act determines your life. So, what's important to you? What do you value? What gives you hope? What inspires you to keep going when things are hard? What do you believe you're capable of? What do you believe you're worth? How do you feel about body size and value? Does the shape of your body interfere with your life and your relationships? Does eating a certain way make you feel better or worse about yourself? What does taking care of your body mean to you? Do you believe that your body is valuable? Now, these are just a few of the many questions that can and probably should be asked, but what we believe matters. It informs how we act, what we prioritize, the foods we choose, and how we decide to move or not move our body. So do not underestimate the power of your faith and your beliefs. Too many people live an unhealthy and unhappy life because they're focusing on the wrong thing. What you believe is going to shine a light on your decisions and give you the direction to make the best choices for your health and weight management. So that's it. These are the solid rocks. You've got nutrition, exercise, emotions or stress management, sleep, and faith or mindset. And all of these have layers. They all have pebbles, they all have sand, and they all have water in them. But before you can look at the layers, you need to master the foundation. And to be honest, most people don't need to go beyond the foundation. If you master the foundation of each of these areas, it is enough to give you a healthy life, a body that you can be proud to live in, and margin to go beyond weight loss goals. So master the majors. And I would love to chat with you about these areas. I would love to talk a little bit about what should you focus on right now? What is the best thing for you to look into? So get in touch. There's always a link at the end of the podcast notes, and get in touch so that we can chat more about it.
I absolutely love that, Ailini. You know, it seems so simple, like easier said than done type of thing. But it really is the foundation of our health. I mean, and I love the example of the water and the sand and the pebbles and the boulders into that bucket in a sense of let's focus on the big stuff first. Like, are you drinking enough water before
Yep.
you even start thinking about counting your macros? Like, are you sleeping at night before even thinking about running your first, half marathon?
Mhm.
Like, think of the big picture first and then slowly start to trickle down and get into that deeper stuff. So it makes perfect sense. And again, easier said than done, but I think you really hit home. And I hope this resonates with a lot of people. And just, just what is one thing that I can do today or this week to really just start focusing in on building a solid foundation?
And we see it all the time in our practices, right? Where we have people asking these questions where we're thinking, that's a good question. That's a valid question, but you're not there yet. Like you don't need to think about this. You don't need to do this, right? Like, you know, what's the best training regimen? And you're like, well, are you working out 2 or 3 times a week? Because if you're not, then we can't talk about optimal
Mhm.
training ranges. Right? And
Yeah.
people will say, oh, how many what macro split is the best? I'm like, well, what are you eating? If you don't know what you're eating, then splitting your macros makes absolutely no difference. So it really is. And it's not that the sand, the water, and the pebbles, it's not that they're not important. It's just that you can't get to them until you really master the majors.
Correct. I was actually listening to a podcast, totally unrelated to health and fitness, but he was just chatting about, what he does throughout his day and his week to be a very successful entrepreneur. And he's like, what I do, what my habits are, really come down where they work for me. If I were to, you see online like 7 habits of a millionaire and
Yeah.
7 morning routines that you need to do to be successful in every area of your life. Like maybe take a couple of those, like maybe those will work, but it's okay if they don't. And
Yeah.
if you figure out things that work for you first. So how you're successful, Ailini, our journeys are very much different, is different from than how I'm
Yep.
successful. And I think people get so caught up on what everybody else is doing, how everything else works for everyone and it's not working for them. And it's like, well, this takes time. We're always developing, changing, evolving. So therefore your health journey always needs to be evolving too. And it's trial and error. You know, what
Yeah.
worked for you last month, a year ago may not work for you now, and that's okay. But you just keep going. You just stay consistent. Consistency is key.
Yeah. And when you look at these lists, you're always going to be able to put them into one of these 5 categories, because everything falls into one of these, and it's just figuring out, how does this fit in your life? What's the most important thing for you right now? Because, like we mentioned, it's not, it's these are all equally important, but depending on where you are in your life, where your priorities are. For example, for parents with babies, sleep isn't going to be the best, but there are other areas that they can work on. And if you're dealing with an injury, your exercise is going to look very different, but it's still important, and all those things. So it really is about finding what works for you, what's best for you. And we really are here to just help you kind of figure that out and try to see what direction you can go in to get the most of all of these things. And with
Yes.
that, next week, we are going to continue on our phases of training, and we're going to talk about phase 2, strength endurance training. And this is exciting. So phase 1 was stabilization. We talked about that. Go listen if you didn't. And next week, we're going to be talking about phase 2, strength endurance training. We will see you then.